Earlier today, Cyberpunk 2077 got another new update. That with the Hotfix update with 1.11, addressing some of those problems to pop up with the previous patch. In this video, I want to break down what exactly was fixed, what it means for the game, and some of the kind of minor controversy or discussions arising around this. And a bit later in the video, I actually want to touch on something else going on with CD Projekt Red apparently removing a mod, what that means, and details around that are getting misconstrued. I do have timestamps down below if you want to check out those individual parts, but otherwise I first want to share a message from today's video sponsor. Oh my god, what's this? Well friends, it's the amazing new mobile RPG Darkfire Heroes, and it's totally free to download right now via that very special link in the description. You can collect, upgrade, and play as crazy powerful, common, rare, and even some epic heroes. Just look at how many awesome ones there are to choose from. Battle your way through deadly monsters and ghouls in this non-stop real-time strategic RPG that is literally changing the way RPGs are played forever. Face unimaginably tough bosses that give you awesome rewards but also will surely test your skills. Right now there's a totally new adventure waiting for you to experience right now in Darkfire Heroes. Battle your friends in the epic real-time PvP arena and claim your title as the true Darkfire hero. Guys, if you download it for free right now using the link in the description, you will receive a special new player welcome bonus, including an adventure chest on your very first day. Darkfire Heroes is completely free on iOS and Android. If you're after some fast-paced RPG action, download Darkfire Heroes right now and receive a totally special reward. I'll see all of you in the battlefield. Looking back at Cyberpunk 2077 and this new update, it was relatively small in what was actually updated and changed, only a couple of things. Although you may notice the download size for you was actually on the larger side, being several gigabytes depending on your platform. As I always mention at the start of these videos, the reason there is such a big discrepancy going from relatively small on PC to much larger on consoles is that on consoles you typically have to download the entire archive. They might only be changing a couple of files. The changes could be relatively minor, but you'll have to download the entire archive containing all of the files in addition to the new ones, so the size overall will be quite a bit bigger. I definitely have noticed some fatigue from the larger downloads on consoles with these past few updates. The first and most critical aspect of this that did just get shipped was a fix for the Down on the Street quest. If you weren't following the situation, basically with the most recent update 1.1, the Down on the Street quest was actually broken in that at the end of it you're supposed to wait for a call from Takemura. Although he would call you eventually, there was a bug where basically it would just answer and then his face would be stuck on screen. This being a huge problem because you can't progress this main story quest, which means you can't progress the main story, but even further it blocked saving, so it kind of nuked that save game for a little bit. It's not like you could just ignore this, you're kind of locked here and had to revert to an earlier save. So now of course as I'm talking about this, it has since been fixed. If you do the Down on the Street quest now and you get to the end, Takemura will call you and talk to you in a normal fashion. CDPR describes how this became an issue with the two recent patches. If people are in progress on that quest on 1.06 and then upgraded to 1.1, it would bug out the quest and make it so those dialogue options wouldn't pop up and the interactions wouldn't happen. And thus far, it seems like it is actually working as intended. People can load up into their saves, complete the quest. Although what is a much more interesting and in some ways a bigger side of this patch that is the surprise update is also that they re-added item randomization. That being the ability for you to actually reroll items in the world, in particular with legendary or unique items. I've seen a lot of confusion around this one, but basically what this allows you to do is, let's say in the world you find somebody with a rare item on their body. This most notably being used with some of the more static spawns for legendary or unique items. When you run up to that body and you loot that item, it'll have a certain set of stats, including a certain amount of mod slots and the base value of it. If you save the game before looting the item and just load your save, then loot it, it'll actually re-roll it and have different stats. The past update removed that re-rolling functionality. This one adds it back in. There's been a lot of back and forth as to why people do this or how it's cheating or save scumming, and one, it's a single player game. People play it differently of course, so you don't have to ever use this if you don't want to. But to give some context as to why this is actually pretty helpful in some cases, some of these items are unique, so it applies to both those unique items NPCs drop and also some that are just sometimes found in containers. You can only get one version of that item, and how many mod slots it has can make it wildly valuable or just not that good. Take for example this one, I sometimes looted it with just one mod slot even though it has a maximum of 4. With one mod slot, it's going to make this item pretty bad, especially compared to a lot of the other armors I could find with 4 mod slots. So for me at least, if I found this with 1 mod slot and I actually wanted to wear this for aesthetic reasons, you would almost have to re-roll it to get to an even relevant build. For example, this armor without any mods has 62 armor, one with mods has 500 armor. It really makes a massive difference with those armadillo mods. But even further, it also applies to some items actually spawning as epic or legendary. Sometimes you might find an item that's epic but could spawn as a legendary, having better stats and more mod slots. That's another instance where I found myself from time to time re-rolling because of course you would much prefer the legendary variant and a legendary variant with the maximum number of mod slots. And although armor is of course one of the big aspects of it, it applies to weapons also. Take for example this precision rifle. It has 278 DPS by default. Just adding 1 mod bumps that number all the way up to 350. Adding 4 mods bumps that number all the way up to 557, nearly doubling the DPS of this overall. Each of those mods just costing under 100 eddies. It's extremely cheap to double my damage. So hopefully in the future we have a more permanent solution to this. Obviously save scumming is never ideal, but for a lot of people, especially on consoles, it was the only way to really optimize your build unless you were devoting a ton of time into crafting, which that in and of itself has its own problems. With this update, there's been some people reporting some undocumented changes. For whatever reason, whenever these updates go live, there's a ton of people asking if X or Y was fixed, even though the patch notes literally don't say it. So things like the Delamain quest were not fixed. That 1 gig that makes it so you can't hit 100% on the game has not yet been fixed. Some people are reporting more FPS. I tested this myself and I saw no new results, so perhaps there is some undocumented change boosting FPS, but at least in my experience that doesn't seem to be the case. But hey, test it yourself and let me know in the comments down below. Although one other one that does seem to have popped up is someone actually having a problem with Takemura, as it seems like after getting the past Takemura bug where he just stays on your screen but then just still playing the game, after this hotfix, when other people call that character, Takemura will also pop up in the screen. I've only seen a couple of reports of this, so it seems like it may be an extremely niche issue. I think most people who got the Takemura bug just kind of ignored it, but either way, I thought that one was worth noting and highlighting also. Taking a step away from that, let's talk about this recent news with CD Red apparently taking down a mod and some of the controversy that followed with it. This has featured what I think is quite a bit in the way of bad reporting, so I did want to highlight it and give my own take on the situation. So you probably saw the headline that either users were looking for ways to romance Keanu Reeves in Cyberpunk, specifically Johnny Silverhand, and of course just the overarching discussion of people wanting to romance Judy and Panam, but depending on their character, they were unable to. So as we've seen modding start to really prop up, and one of the big pushes we've seen in modding, as I talked about in my last video, which I'll have linked in the eye, are model or texture swaps. So for example, with vehicles or other NPCs, you could change their appearance. This became a bit more nefarious in that some people were taking the Joy Toy model in the Joy Toy interaction and swapping that with other characters, which in effect, in a very jank way, allowed you to have a romance scene with a character you typically couldn't have a romance scene with. So you could swap out a Joy Toy for Johnny Silverhand or Takemura, etc., etc. This raising some concerns in that it is using Keanu Reeves' likeness, who is of course a real person. He plays a character in the game, but it literally is Keanu Reeves, in romanceable options that were never intended to be there from the beginning. So CD Red actually sent out a response about this, saying, "Our most important rule regarding user-generated content, game mods in particular, is that it can't be harmful towards others. In the case of model swaps, especially those that involve explicit situations, it can be perceived as such by the people who lent us their appearance for the purpose of creating characters in Cyberpunk 2077. Therefore, when making fan content, creators have to make sure they've gotten permission from all the concerned parties, which might be people other than CD Red. For the characters we've invented for the game, we broadly permit you to tweak the game at will and just have fun. When it comes to models of real people whom we've asked to participate in the game, we kindly ask you refrain from using them in a situation that might be found offensive if you don't have explicit permission." So basically what they're saying here is, please don't do model swaps for people that actually represent real people, like Johnny Silverhand is representing Keanu Reeves. Then if they create a artificial situation where you could romance him, that is unideal and perhaps even against their contract together. But seemingly CDPR is mostly okay with this happening for the likes of Panam and Judy because those are 100% 100% fictional characters. Of course, that still does raise some moral or ethical concerns, but not quite as an extreme with somebody like Keanu Reeves and Johnny Silverhand. I've seen a lot of people saying, and even some articles saying, that CDPR took this mod down, and although that's kind of true, it's also not really true. Basically, on the mod page, there was one download you could do actually swapping Keanu Reeves for a Joy Toy. CDPR just asked the mod author if he could remove that option but leave up the rest, and they never actually told him to take the entire mod page with all of the downloads and the tutorial on how to do model swaps down. He did that on his own accord because, of course, you have several headlines, you have a lot of people very upset or feeling strongly one way or the other, so he took the page down on his own accord, not because he was forced to. They just asked him to take down the one Johnny Joy Toy setting. So that's what actually happened here. Of course, there are all kinds of people feeling super strongly one way or the other. I know a lot of people are saying this makes it out like CD Projekt is against modders yet again. The other example being how they actually removed the console from the game in one of the earlier updates, which did hurt modding somewhat, but since then we've had mods adding in consoles. Just recently we saw the official modding support tools, not mod tools, but modding support tools, very different. And I think time will tell to see how this relationship between modders and CDPR evolves over the future. With that said, it's pretty much going to wrap it up for this video. I do want to say another big thank you to Darkfire Heroes for sponsoring this video. Ad revenue is the lowest in January, so sponsorships like this really do genuinely help the channel. But with that said, I thank you all for watching again, and I hope to see you all next time. Later.